Poland is pouring $137 billion into its military. Since 2022, its defense budget has shattered every NATO record, building an army that will soon outnumber Germany's and command more tanks than the entire Old West combined. 4.8% of GDP, the highest in the alliance. But this isn't just a story of national defense. For the established powers of Europe, this unstoppable surge from Central Europe is becoming a serious problem. February 24th, 2022. Russia crosses into Ukraine. And for Poland, watching from just kilometers away, the math becomes brutally simple. They are next. Not speculation, not paranoia. Geography. Poland sits between a collapsing Russian empire desperate to reassert dominance and a Western Europe that has spent decades pretending threats don't exist east of Berlin. For 70 years, Poland has been the buffer, the borderland, the place where empires come to settle scores. But this time, Poland refuses to wait. Within months, the Homeland Defense Act passes. Mandatory 3% GDP spending, minimum. Troop expansion from 99,000 to 216,000, and a promise that rewrites Poland's entire strategic posture by 2035. 300,000 active personnel, the largest land army in the European Union. This isn't aggression, it's mathematics. Poland has been conquered, partitioned, and erased from maps more times than most nations have existed. The lesson? Self-reliance isn't optional. The Act doesn't just authorize spending. It removes bureaucratic chains. Poland can now fast-track equipment testing, bypass EU procurement regulations, and acquire weapons at a pace that makes Brussels uncomfortable. The same speed Ukraine adopted under fire. Because for Poland, the threat isn't hypothetical. Russia is already waging war against them. Hybrid attacks, cyber warfare, border provocations with Belarus. The choice was clear: transform or risk everything. And so Poland did something the Old West thought impossible. It became the NATO member that doesn't beg for protection. It became the protector. But the transformation was just beginning. Because a law is one thing, arsenal? That's where the real shockwave begins. 2025, Poland allocates 4.8% of its GDP to defense, 166 billion zloty, 38 billion euros, the highest defense spending ratio in NATO, higher than the United States, higher than every single founding member. Let that sit for a moment. A nation that was communist 35 years ago now outspends the architects of the alliance. Poland isn't catching up, it's redefining the standard, and the spending, surgical, calculated, ruthless. $44.2 billion to South Korea, the single largest arms deal in modern European history. K2 Black Panther tanks, K9 self-propelled howitzers, FA-50 fighter jets. Technology transfers that will let Poland manufacture cutting-edge weapons domestically within a decade. Why South Korea? Because the Old West couldn't deliver. Germany's Leopard tank production? Years-long waitlists. France's Caesar artillery backed up through 2030. The United States? Reliable but stretched thin, supporting Ukraine. So Poland did what the ambitious always do when the establishment moves too slowly. It found a faster partner. $3 billion more to Lockheed Martin F-16 Vipers. Top-line fighters upgraded to crush anything Russia flies. Over 130 contracts signed in 2024 alone, worth $410 million and climbing. Then there are the Abrams. American main battle tanks rolling into Polish bases. Not a handful, hundreds. Enough to make any armored commander salivate. By 2030, Poland will field 1,100 tanks. More than Germany, more than France, more than the United Kingdom and Italy. Combined, Poland bypassed every single slow-moving European supplier. And the Old West, they're starting to realize what that means. But tanks and jets are just tools. The real question, what happens when the underdog becomes the apex predator? Germany deploys troops to Poland's border, not for invasion, for engineering support. Double-digit numbers of soldiers heading east to help fortify the East Shield, Poland's multi-billion-dollar border wall program. Barriers, surveillance systems, tank traps, minefields, trenches, a fortress rising along the Belarusian and Kaliningrad frontiers. On paper, it's cooperation. Germany helping an ally, but read deeper. Germany, once Europe's undisputed economic and military leader, is now deploying troops to Poland's border, not the other way around. The power dynamic has flipped. Poland's active force, 216,000 personnel, now exceeds Germany's 185,600. And it's not stopping. 300,000 by 2035. The territorial defense forces add tens of thousands more reserves. Meanwhile, Germany struggles to meet basic readiness targets. Russia notices too. Moscow frames Poland's buildup as provocation, calls it destabilization, a threat to regional peace. The irony is rich, coming from a nation currently occupying Ukrainian territory. But the rhetoric reveals something deeper: fear. Poland isn't just defending anymore, it's projecting power. And that terrifies Moscow. Because a strong Poland means NATO's eastern flank isn't a liability, it's a fortress. Russia can't pressure the Baltics without going through Warsaw first. And Warsaw, it just became the most heavily armed capital in Europe. 75% of Poles support this, despite the cost, despite the deficits, despite Brussels raising eyebrows and opening deficit proceedings. The public backs arming their nation no matter what it takes, because they remember. They remember Molotov-Ribbentrop. They remember Soviet tanks in Warsaw. They remember being the chessboard where empires play. Not anymore. But here's where the problem becomes undeniable. Poland's rise isn't happening in a vacuum. Every billion spent shifts the European balance. Old powers watch their influence erode. Germany fortifies Poland's borders instead of its own. France scrambles to develop joint missile programs to stay relevant. The United Kingdom quietly increases Baltic commitments to remain visible. Poland isn't asking for permission. And that's exactly what makes the Old West nervous. 10,000 American troops are permanently stationed in Poland. Not a rotation. Permanent. The 2020 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement made it official. Barracks, airfields, logistics hubs. The United States didn't just commit forces, it committed infrastructure, routes. Why? Because Poland is the anchor. The entire NATO strategy in Eastern Europe now hinges on Warsaw's readiness. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Baltics are defendable only if Poland holds. And Poland is making damn sure it does. The SAFE initiative adds $51 billion in EU defense loans. Drones, air defenses, more tanks. Poland is leveraging European funds to build a military that will dwarf the continent's traditional powers within a decade. And Brussels, they're writing the checks because they know the alternative is worse. A weak Poland means Russian armor reaching Germany in weeks. A strong Poland means Moscow never tries. But it's not just about defense anymore. It's about industry, domestic production, sovereignty. South Korea's tech transfers aren't charity, they're investments. Poland will produce K2 tanks locally, build FA-50 jets on Polish soil. The economic multiplier is staggering. Defense contractors are setting up factories. Engineers are staying home instead of emigrating. The stay or go question that haunts every ambitious Pole. It's shifting. Why leave when your nation is building the future? 75% support. That's not just polling noise, that's consensus. Poland's military surge isn't controversial domestically, it's celebrated, because it represents something deeper than tanks and missiles. It represents a rival. Poland has spent centuries as the victim, the invaded, the partitioned, the footnote in someone else's empire. Not anymore. Now, Poland is writing its own chapter, and the rest of Europe is reading nervously. This isn't just about defense spending. It's about a nation finally taking its rightful place as the unstoppable center of a new European order. So where does this end? Short term, East Shield completes its intensive phase. Germany finishes deployment by 2027. F-16 Viper upgrades finish rolling out. Poland's arsenal becomes fully operational, not just large, but lethal. Medium term, 300,000 troops achieved, 1,100 tanks fielded. The ELSA missile program with France, Germany and Italy comes online. Poland isn't just buying weapons, it's co-developing the next generation. Long-term, Poland becomes the largest land army in the European Union. Domestic defense industry booms. Warsaw is the indispensable capital for NATO's Eastern strategy, and the Pax Polska narrative, once dismissed as nationalist fantasy, starts sounding plausible. Because here's what changed. Poland didn't wait for permission, didn't beg for protection, didn't apologize for prioritizing survival. It spent $137 billion, shattered NATO records, built an arsenal that makes old powers sweat, and did it all while maintaining public support that most democracies can only dream of. The Old West watched Poland rise from communist wreckage to economic powerhouse. Now they're watching it become a military colossus. And the discomfort is palpable. Germany fortifies its neighbor's border, not its own. Russia calls it provocation, but knows it can't act. France scrambles to stay relevant in joint projects. The power map of Europe is being redrawn in real time. And Poland is holding the pen. This isn't a problem for Europe. It's a reckoning. The question was never whether Poland could become a superpower. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is, what kind of Europe emerges when the unstoppable center finally takes command? Poland has rewritten the rules, and the rest of the continent is still figuring out what that means for them. If stories like this keep you awake at night, subscribe to Economics Edge. Because Poland's rise, this is just the opening move.